Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're going to get to the old, tried, true TIE IN Starfighter. So, the TIE IN Starfighter, also known as the Imperial Starfighter, has seen massive numbers throughout most of the Galactic Civil War and onward. Occasionally, due to their distinct shape, uh, Rebel and New Republic pilots. I want to say pirates. I don't know why. Refer to the craft as eyeballs. Uh, which was really brought up in some of the novelization. Let's see here. So, characteristics: the TIE fighter was the original design, later upgraded. TIE models such as the TIE SA bomber, the TIE IN interceptor, the TIE D defender, the TIE D automated starfighter, and many more. The TIE fighter was a descendant of the TIE starfighter and the V Wing starfighter, both developed by the Galactic Republic, and was manufactured by Senior Fleet Systems. In addition to the TIE and the V Wing, it was also descended from the TIE Starfighter, the TIE model developed for the Galactic Empire. The namesake for the fighter and the line of the Senior Flight System, the PS4 twin ion engines that acted as its engines. However, uh, it also, to some degree, was named after the term of clothing due to the overall shape resemblance to a bow tie. The tie IN's engines was one of the most precisely manufactured propulsion system in the galaxy, and with no moving parts was low maintenance. Unlike the tie before it, the tie IN sported independent generators for the engine and the weapons. Power conduits were attached between the engine system and the solar arrays for good performance. The lack of combat shields, hyperdrive, and life support systems, in concert with the advanced engine design, reduced the mass of the fighter and conferred exceptional maneuverability. This also made for both inexpensive and quick uh, replacement of said systems. Now, I know I mentioned in one of the other videos, I think it was for the TIE shuttle. Uh, Underneath the ball, there is a slide out that's there, and that's where the engine actually is. I don't know if we're going to get to that here or not, but they had developed that, especially in the at the time it was Galoob, but now it's all Hasbro. Hasbro has bought out Galoob and all the other ones, and now they have it was what the Micro Fleet at the time. I think it's Micro Galaxy now. Uh, uh, Either way, the original design on that, the engine pulled out from the back, so that way you could work on it, uh, whatever you needed to, or if you needed, you could pull the engine off, put in another one, and work on the one in between flights or whatever. So it offered the ability to do quick turnaround to be able to get things back up and running. Um, let's see. Primary armament was a pair of SL or L-S1 laser cannons, coupled with a powerful sensor suite. The cannons were relatively powerful and well placed. Any well placed hit on a starfighter or medium sized transport could damage or destroy it. It did not carry missile tubes, but such weapons could be added if necessary. Due to the lack of life support systems, each TIE pilot had a fully sealed flight suit superior to their Rebel counterparts, which is why we see them wearing the suits in the movies that they do. The absence of the hyperdrive also rendered the fighter totally independent on carrier ships when deployed in enemy systems. The TIE IN also lacked landing gear, another mass reproduction measure. While the ships were structurally capable of sitting on their wings, they were not designed to land or disembark their pilots without special support. On Imperial ships, TIEs were launched from racks in the hangar bays. TIEs were designed to attack in large numbers, overwhelming an enemy craft. Standard attack squadrons consisted of 12 fighters, while full attack wings were made up of 6 squadrons. So then you're talking about 72 fighters. Let's see. The Imperials used as many that they came to be considered, or used so many that it came to be considered symbols of the empire and its might. They were also very cheap to produce, reflecting the imperial philosophy of quantity over quality. Contrary to popular belief, the ships did possess ejection seats, but the nature of space warfare often resulted in pilots riding their craft down to a swift end rather than ejecting and risking slow death in the heat loss and oxygen starvation in the vacuum of space. The ejection system was more of a formality rather than anything else. Given the delicacy of the craft, by the time enough damage was done to require the pilot to eject, it would likely have already destroyed itself. The design choice of the TIE IN could arguably be explained by imperial military philosophy, which viewed the starfighters and their pilots as expendable assets. Though imperial pilots were of an elite stock, they were also expected to consider themselves expendable in accordance with their ideology during training. Other Imperial pilots considered TIE fighter pilots to be suicidal due to how expendable the starfighters were. Like stormtroopers, TIE pilots had their own identification, such as DS 16 or 612. The first two letters indicated the posting, the next two or three digits indicated the squadron number, and the last number indicated the pilot's ranking in that squadron. Thus, produced procedure reduced them from being no more than anonymous and standardized operatives of the imperial war machine. This attitude was further reflected by the lack of any sentimental attachment to particular ties by TIE pilots, unlike rebel pilots who often grew attached to their craft. As far as they were concerned, every TIE fighter, whether recreationally or reconditioned or factory fresh, was identical and considered as nothing more than tools, much in the same way pilots were. The disadvantage of the TIE fighter was its lack of deflector shields. In combat, pilots had to rely on the TIE IN's maneuverability to avoid damage. The cockpit did incorporate crash webbing, a repulsor lift anti grav field, and a high G shock seat to help protect the pilot. However, these did next to nothing to help protect against enemy blaster fire. However, despite the lack of protection, the fighter was at least able to survive glancing hits, such as when the quad laser cannons on the Millennium Falcon were able to hit a TIE fighter without actually destroying it. The TIE INs, um, uh, I'm sorry, my mind is. Twin ion engines were also notoriously easy to sabotage. All it took was moving an energizer out of alignment for the TIE's recharge system to become time bombs. The side view of the TIE IN's reactor panels curiously resembled the emblem of the Confederacy of Independent Systems, but it is not clear if the similarity was intentional. The front rear cross section of the fighter was designed to be small to make it difficult to hit with blasters, but these side panels proved easy targets for flanking enemy pilots. They also hampered the fighter's ability to maneuver while in an atmosphere. Okay, the history. The basic TIE Starfighter was designed at some point after 22 BBY and inspired a number of other Imperial starfighter manufacturers, or starfighters manufactured by Senior Fleet Systems. If I can only read here today, that would be great. Which became collectively known as the TIE series. The TIE line fighter, as they're calling it here on Wikipedia, not the TIE IN. This was the first version of an interceptor, is really what this is. Because this was the interceptor model as they came up with all the others. Um, was one of them, and replaced the original model as a standard fleet fighter for the Empire. While the original TIE had performance partially with heavier built or partially with heavier built X-wings, the newer TIE INs boasted improved engines and more powerful weapons, surpassing contemporary Rebel fighters. Yes, they were a little slightly faster, I think, than the X-wing, but not by much. Um, the weapon systems, I know they had gone from a 4D in-game system to a 5D. So, whatever you want to call the output ratio of that would be, whatever. I'm just speaking of game terms. It was a drastic improvement, but it still lacked the shields. So, we'll see if they mention that here coming up. All right. Trying to figure out where we were. I think I'm reading over, but the TIE line fighter was one of them, and replaced the original model of the standard fleet fighter of the Empire. While original TIE had performance partly with heavier built X-wings, the newer TIE IN boasted improved engines and more powerful weapons, surpassing. Okay, the TIEs would be used in massive numbers throughout the Galactic Civil War, and would be regarded by many as a symbol of the Empire. Some TIEs fell into the hands of the rebellion, who would sometimes use them to infiltrate Imperial facilities. It had been intended that the TIE IN would be replaced by the TIE Interceptor as a direct result of the T 65 X Wing starfighter owned by the Lightspeed Panthers, outperforming them in the Felhu campaign, resulting in 286 destroyed TIEs. Indeed, interceptors began to see greater use around the time of the Battle of Endor, but the collapse of the imperial government into sectionalism precluded this. As the Galactic Empire retreated, more and more factories found themselves behind New Republic lines and ceased production. The New Republic made limited use of captured TIEs, equipping them with shields and assigning them to sectors where they weren't considered a symbol of the Empire. Their most notable use in New Republic service was that of Battle Admora. Captured TIE fighters were also used for deceptive purposes, such as during the mission to Fuzzbelt 4. By the time the peace treaty was signed, the Empire, not or now known as the Imperial Remnant, began to use export starfighters manufactured by some or by other races, such as the Celestin Sorosub Corporation Praybird class starfighter, because they lacked the manufacturing facilities to build new TIE fighters. Now, as a behind the scene, as we're kind of winding down from our Wikipedia, they have quite a bit here yet. Let's see. Originally meant to have a blue hull. This was abandoned when the blue screen filming made the fighter transparent. The original TIE IN fighters seen in A New Hope were relatively white. The TIEs in The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi were grayer, with the bluish hue added during post production. Rob Coleman originally considered putting TIEs into the end of Revenge of the Sith, but George Lucas decided to show Alpha 3 Nimbus class V Wing starfighters instead, pointing out that the Empire would have 19 years to build the TIEs, which I do remember that being in a extended feature on one of the movies or whatever. Although expanded universe material and the speed chart used in the film crew of Return of the Jedi shows the speed of the TIEs to be equal to that of the X-Wing. A New Hope shows them overtaking X-Wings despite the later going full throttle. In Rogue Squadron series video games, a TIE fighter was used on the basis of the game's sound test to test the input of stereo sound or surround sound. It first flies toward the player and then flies around the screen. In the 2001 video game Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds, TIE fighters served the Galactic Empire's fighter unit and may be built at air bases in single player or multiplayer. The 2005 video game Star Wars Battlefront 2 depicts the TIE fighters as having a photon torpedo launcher in addition to two laser cannons. However, this was most likely a game mechanic used to balance teams and gameplay. The first edition of Star Wars, the role playing game, back in 1987, states that the cargo capacity was 110 kilograms and the consumables last 1 day. But later sources retcon these numbers. A TIE fighter alongside the T 65 X Wing Starfighter made a very brief cameo in Star Wars Episode II Attack of the Clones during Anakin and Obi-Wan's chase against Zam Wesell, where the later vessel was chasing the former. Star Wars Rogue Squadron 3 Rebel Strike game gave the following description concerning TIE Fighter. The first in the series of advanced twin-ion engine starfighters, the original TIE Fighter was developed by Senior Fleet Systems. The agile single-pilot craft has a titanium alloy hull, a quadridium steel-armored solar panels, but lacks a deflector shield and primary life support systems. The TIE Fighter was intended to be used as a short-range attack craft launched from nearby Imperial installations. TIE fighters typically attack in swarms to overwhelm their opponents. In 2012, EFX Collectibles released a limited edition of 657 studio scale TIE fighter models. Okay, so all this stuff comes from all the different video games. Of course, we're going to have it from West End Games, Wizards of the Coast. What is it? Fantasy Flight Games, I think, currently has the license. Everybody knows the TIE Fighter. The TIE IN that we look at is just what most people consider as the TIE Fighter. Makes sense. Ralph McQuarrie, when he drew it, he did have pretty much the basic design of it, and it does look pretty close to what we have on screen. So to bring this all full circle and we look at the TIE IN Starfighter here from West End Games, we do have Senior Flight Systems TIE-IN Starfighter. This is, of course, an Imperial design, although if you ever watch Rebels, I will point out the front two kind of half or third, really, of the solar panels. They kind of cut those in for, I think it was the Mining Guild, and then it was kind of repainted a little bit of a different color because I think it was like a safety yellow or something like that. So it gave it a distinct, different view. So there, this fighter was not just the Empire, but it was also sold out to many others. In some of the old West End game books, there is like a full page ad that they had put in, and I think it said that if you buy 10 TIE fighters, you get 2 free. It was something like that. So, and then they actually had like a listing price or something like that. It was a big money maker for the company. So if you look at it in that regard, and if you want to think of yourself being in that realm of the world of the galaxy at whole, West End Games had done a lot of like full page just like ads to just kind of grab you into the whole world of everything. It wasn't just a role playing game book, but it was also a guide to the galaxy at large. Okay, so this comes from the Rise of the Empire. We have sources: the core rule book, the Thrawn trilogy source book, the Essential Guide to Vehicles and Vessels, and of course this book, which was put together later. This is not, from my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, this was not an official West End Games book, but somebody else had gone through and created this book out of all the other things that was there in West End Games, and they did grab a couple that were outside, but felt it needed to be in the D6 system. So uh, I'll add that in there. Now this is a space superiority starfighter. Starfighter scale has a length of 6.3 meters, so not overly long. It is fairly compact, but it has those huge solar panels, which is what takes up the biggest bulk of the craft itself. So, crew of one, cargo capacity, because this is a modified version. It doesn't have the 110 kilograms, which was listed originally. This is down to 65 kilograms. Has enough consumables for 2 days. Again, and I will mention that we see the pilot in that full suit. There's no oxygen in there. The suit's maintaining them. I think it's going to be a very uncomfortable 2 days if you're stuck in there. You can do it, but it's not something that anyone's really going to want to do. We have a cost of 60,000 credits brand new and 25,000 credits used. There was a lot of, it was mentioned in some of the books about independent planetary governments buying TIE fighters of their own to help keep pirates from attacking them and so on and so forth. And in those regards, it is a good fighter. It is a good base fighter, but it does lack the shields. If you're just protecting the planetary system, you don't need the hyperdrive. So we do have all that. All right, we have a maneuverability of 2D and a space of 10. Like I said, it is a fairly fast ship of its type. Let's see, we have an atmosphere speed of 1,200 kilometers an hour, a hull of 2D, which is our standard, and this is where I really take all of our standard for everything else as well. Okay, our sensor packet, you have passive sensors that can scan out to 2 kilometers at a 0 modifier, an active scan out to 4 kilometers at a +1 modifier or +1D modifier, active search out to 6 kilometers at a +2D modifier, and a focus out to 300 meters at a +3 modifier. So, for a simple fighter, it's not bad. It's not the greatest, but it's not bad, really. Let's see, and we have the 2 laser cannons. Now, because these are fire linked together, instead of being a 4D with a single laser cannon like the standard TIE fighter, it has the two of them and they're fire linked. So now we have 5D damage. Has a fire control of 2D. Um, I don't typically go into the range, but our atmospheric range, and this correlates with everything else. Our atmospheric range is 1 to 300 meters, so that's your 1 to 3. Our 12 is 1.2 kilometers, and our 25 is 2.5 kilometers. So you see how they correlate with each other. So, when we're looking at our range, is every square would be essentially 100 meters. So it works out pretty well. Again, we do not have a hyperdrive or shields or whatever else. Uh, Although it's not to say that different groups or installations or anyone else, you know, uh, people have come up with different ideas of like a hyperdrive unit that would actually clamp on here. Uh, and there's a YouTube video of it somewhere, and I do not remember what it was called. But if you did look up a TIE Fighter hyperdrive, you might find it, and it's a very interesting concept for a hyperdrive unit to be able to be put onto a TIE fighter. I think it only has like a single jump, so you get to jump to a system. Probably as a vanguard unit before all the Star Destroyers would go or anything else, and you could start an attack, and then you might even be able to sneak in, and then the rest of the fleet comes in. So it's that basic design and interesting design. These are things that blew everybody's mind because way back when we never thought of all this stuff. I mean, this is from the view of George Lucas and his galaxy that we get to share a good part in. And Disney now technically owns, but whether you agree with Disney, disagree with Disney, whatever, it's still us fans when we bring it down to like role playing games, what we choose to do in our own galaxies. As a role playing game, you get to make it your own galaxy, and how you want to treat it is how you want to treat it. And no one can ever take that away from you. And I do love that idea. You can always grab from here and from there. And I know it has been said from Dave Filoni. And when you look at the Clone Wars in the animated series, uh, the 3D animated series, you get to see where he's grabbing things from. And I can kind of see that. And it is a lot of fun. The biggest thing I really enjoyed out of it all was really the fact that we get to see different planets and different civilizations, things that are talked about in the movies, but we never got to see them. So now we get to see them flushed out a little bit more. So, with that, I appreciate the fact that you're here with me. I know it's a fighter that I think everybody has covered. And the fact that you're sitting here watching this and you made it this far through it, I really do appreciate it. Hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you in the next video.